Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome, my friends, to the podcast. I'm so grateful to have you join me today. As some of you may know, I belong to the local community choir, and I love doing this. Singing it's not something that, I'm not going to have a solo career ever, but I truly enjoy singing. Now, sometimes we'll sing a song that is a little bit tricky, and so we have to take each piece at a time, each soprano, alto, tenor, and bass part at a time to figure out what notes we're supposed to sing. And a lot of times that's because there is something called dissonance. Now, dissonance is a lack of harmony. It's when two or more tones clash, like they just don't mesh. And so when you're trying to sing them, it's a little bit trickier because you can't necessarily hear in your head the way it's supposed to go because it's written in such a with that dissonance. So musical dissonance is used by composers to set a mood, like sometimes it's angst or it's fear or it's urgency. Dissonance portrays conflict or tension in a piece of music. It generates movement. So if you think of, you've got this harmonic part, that's called consonant, right? And then you move into this dissonant tension part, and then you go back to the consonant harmonic part. So you've got this movement that goes through the music. And so that's part of the reason why they use it. Another reason why composers use it is it creates a unique experience. Not all dissonance is created equal. There are ways to create different moods, like we talked about earlier, with the different notes that are written. And a lot of times, every once in a while you'll get a piece that doesn't really resolve at the end. It kind of leaves you hanging, and that it's super tense. But for the most part, that dissonance demands resolution. And sometimes it's just the very last note that resolves. And so it with that demand for resolution, it creates this expectation. Right. And so even though it might feel super uncomfortable, it really isn't a bad thing. It's a tool that we create or that composers use to create beautiful music. Now, similarly, there is something called cognitive dissonance. And it's similar to the musical dissonance in that there's confliction, right? But instead of notes that are conflicting, it's conflicting thought patterns or belief systems. And so this can cause us emotional turmoil. It can cause us confusion. It can cause internal tension. And so it can be super, super uncomfortable when you've got these two opposing thought patterns or beliefs that are duking it out inside of your brain. So, for example, when I think I've talked about this before. When I decided that I wanted to do a podcast, it wasn't just, oh, I'm going to do a podcast. It was, hey, you need to do a podcast. No, that sounds really scary. I don't want to do that. Like, I am totally comfortable going about my day the way I'm doing it right now. I don't need that added stress, the added things to do, yada, yada, right? And so my brain was like, no, you need to do this. This is the next step for your progression. No, I don't want to do that, right? And so inside my brain, they totally was duking it out. They're fighting against each other. Obviously, the new thought prevailed. So that was an interesting process. And so sometimes we'll have things like that, but that aren't like a huge deal, but they're like little decisions to, just to kind of get us out of our comfort zone. And other times it's a big deal, a big, big deal. So what causes that cognitive dissonance? How did those two thoughts get in your brain in the first place? Well, usually you've got a long-held belief or a thought pattern that is challenged by a new belief or thought pattern. Okay. So those old ones can be come into your brain, from childhood. That happens, a lot of the time is what we're dealing with, trying to resolve these old thought patterns that just are not serving us anymore. Sometimes it's just repeated thoughts that we're doing to ourselves. And other times it's something that you're told repeatedly. And so you start believing it. So these new challenging thoughts and programs, they create tension inside of your brain. So where does that tension come from? Well, you may think that it's just from the thoughts themselves, but it actually goes a little bit deeper than that. There is a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. And the whole job of the RAS is what it's short for, is to keep you safe. Now, safe doesn't necessarily mean quote unquote safe, right? Safe means familiar. And so anything that disrupts that familiar flow, the RAS is going to say, danger, do not go there. This is not a wise choice. And so your brain will actually work to maintain the status quo. Okay. And herein lies the struggle because it's trying to maintain that status quo, it's going to find ways to justify and find proof to go back to the current patterns. Okay. And so that's what causes this internal turmoil. So you have to consciously then weigh the different beliefs all the time. So sometimes it's good to challenge your beliefs and thought patterns to make sure that they are the right ones. So think back to that, our musical example, where you have that consonant or harmonic, and then you go to the dissonant, which is the angst part, and then you go back to the consonant. So you've got your pattern is 1 2 1, right? So sometimes that's a good thing, to go, okay, is this thought pattern really serving me? And if it is, right, you go back to 1, right? You maintain that 1 2 1 pattern. But you have to be really honest about these new thought patterns. Are they truly serving you? Are they really propelling you forward in your own personal growth and in the way you want to accomplish your goals and who you want to become? And so sometimes, every time you enter that in, you're going to feel this tension inside of your brain. And so you have to be very, very cognizant of what you are doing. So if those original beliefs and thought patterns are not serving you, then the challenge is to eradicate those old patterns that either aren't serving you or maybe they're even harmful. And again, that comes back to truly being honest. So how do you do that? Sometimes it's just a decision. And really what that means is your subconscious isn't really holding on to that thought pattern very tightly. Maybe you didn't truly believe it. And you're just ready, like, I'm done with that. I'm not going to deal with that anymore. So sometimes it really is just a decision. Sometimes you can do it gradually, right? You can transfer your old ideas to the new ideas by degrees. So for example, let's say it's, I hate my body. Like that's pretty strong, right? Then you move to, I have a body. And then you move to, I can move my body. And then you can go to, my body moves pretty well. And then it's, my body is incredible. And then, I love my body. So you can see that the degrees are very, very important. And each degree must be believable by your reticular activating system. So if you look at that, I hate my body to I have a body to I can move my body, each step is progressing you to where you want to be to I love my body, but each step has to be believable. Okay, now at other times, it's going to take a whole lot of effort to change your patterns inside and to truly overcome that angst inside, that dissonance. And so this is when these beliefs are deeply, deeply ingrained, and they're going to take some time, and you're going to need to be patient with yourself. So you can do some things like journaling. You look at your body language. Sometimes you can mess up that whole system by, if you're used to frowning all day, well, today I'm going to make an effort to smile, right? So using your body language to alter those belief patterns and really, cement the ones that you want really is a helpful tool. You can look at your word choice. What are the things that not only are you thinking, but the things that you say out loud all the time? So for example, I used to say, I'm sorry all the time. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Well, what did that do? It made me feel like I was always wrong. And so I always felt bad about myself. And so one day somebody said, why do you say sorry all the time? I don't know. It's just something I say. I wasn't even thinking about it. But those non-thought things that we say are a reflection of what's going on inside of our subconscious. And really it's indicative of those patterns that are inside of our brain. And so I made a very conscious effort to stop saying I'm sorry. Unless, of course, it's appropriate, right? But I was more aware of that. And it was amazing to me how much better I felt about myself just because I was more aware of the things that I was verbally saying. So something else you can do is therapy. And you know, I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I think therapy is absolutely essential. And I honestly think everybody can benefit from therapy. And if you're not willing to do therapy, then do a coach. Find a coach to help you out with that. So here's the thing though. There's going to come a time when you will stand at a precipice. Like imagine you're at this cliff, right? And you've got to either take a leap or return to where you are. So at some point, your body is going to say, okay, what's it going to be? What are you going to believe? Which thought pattern do you actually want to have here? And this can be super scary because you're going to be forced to commit. Now, this usually means that there's going to have to be some kind of action taken. So think about like a battered woman leaving an abusive situation, right? At some point, she's got to decide, this is what I'm going to do from I refuse to be the battered woman anymore, right? So she's got to make that choice. So something else, maybe not as extreme. Let's say you're in a comfortable job and you know that that job is not the right fit for you. So you need to either stay there, right? And maintain the status quo, or you're going to be required to quit that and follow after your dream. It's especially scary if it is like an entrepreneur type situation. So let's say you've got low self-esteem. At some point, you're going to have to decide, am I going to stay as a person with low self-esteem, or am I going to act with confidence and think with confidence and be confident? So imposter syndrome can really play a role in this too, because it can hold us back from really taking that leap. So because it truly, it impedes us from taking that step. Okay. And if you don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's believing that you are not that person, right? That you want to be, and that you are not worthy to be that person. Okay. So be aware of that, because that's going to be just another version of this precipice that you're going to have to jump off. Like, are you truly going to believe in who you want to be and take that leap? Now, when you do take that leap, you cannot go back. That's it. You can't go back to where you were. So music doesn't, like the music of your life doesn't go back to that original score. It's not a 1-2-1. Now becomes a 1-2-3. It's a progression. All right. It cannot become the same thing. However, what it does become is more beautiful and more authentic and more you and more conducive to who you want to be and how you want to grow. So here's a really great example of this. So you all know the Disney movie Aladdin. I love the music in Aladdin, but I really love this story. So if you think about it, the consonant part, the harmonic part of him, right? What he's always grown up with is he's a street rat. He's worthless. He's penniless. He steals and he lies to stay alive. But notice that there's this dissonance that comes into him when he's told he is this diamond in the rough, right? That's completely opposite of what he has lived his whole life as. And he doesn't believe it. And he's not willing to believe that. And so because of that, his brain tells him, oh, you've got to lie and you've got to pretend to be something that you're not in order for this to actually be true. And it gets him into a lot of problems. In fact, it almost takes him to a place where he loses everything that he's been offered in this opportunity. But in the end, he decides to trust this new belief, and he ends up solidifying that opportunity. So next time you watch Aladdin, think of this, it's he didn't go back to being that street rat. It's not 1 2 1, it's 1 2 3. He actually did become that diamond. Even though he was a little bit rough around the edges, he was able to smooth that out a little bit more. So, how do you use cognitive dissonance as a tool of self-improvement? Just like in music, composers use cognitive dissonance for the purpose that we talked about earlier. You can use cognitive dissonance in your own self-improvement, but you have to be aware of it, right? You've got to recognize what's going on inside of your brain. The way to use it is to lean into that comfort. Once you know that cognitive dissonance is going on, and you're like, oh, okay, I can recognize that I've introduced this new thought. My brain is not liking this, and it is trying to sabotage my progression, right? And so if you lean into that uncomfort and go, I'm okay with it feeling uncomfortable, and you continually evaluate the two opposing patterns and programs and beliefs, and just know that you have the freedom to decide honestly what is in your best interest. As when you're aware of it and you're constantly judging it out, you get to decide what that end result is going to be. So sometimes it helps to talk it over with a trusted friend, a mentor, an advisor, a coach, a therapist, whoever it is that you trust to really walk this path with you. That can be a really, really good source of working through this. Don't be fooled by false imitations, though. Sometimes we're presented with these new ideas and they seem really, really amazing and good. And so that's what I mean by being really honest and very aware of what is happening. So just be aware that sometimes your brain, you'll see these new ideas and it just seems all glittery and golden, and it may not lead to the best place. So something else that how you can use this as a tool is, as you are seeing what's going on, you can then do the work to eradicate what isn't serving you. Maybe it's that new belief. You push that out, right? But if it's something where you do need to change something, an old belief, or maybe destroy an old belief and totally get rid of it, just know, just like we said earlier, that it could take time, and to be patient with yourself. I've got a thought pattern and a belief system that I have been working on for over 10 years. And I was in a class recently, and it's interesting because, I'd go to a lot of courses and stuff, what do you want to work on? And I'd always choose this goal. I really want to change this mindset. And let me tell you, I have worked on this many times through meditations, through tapping, through a lot of different, it is just so deeply rooted. It has taken me a long, long time. Well, I was in a class recently, and again, there was, what's something that you want to work on, a belief system or something. And so I wrote this thing down, and for the first time, it no longer felt true. It no longer resonated with me. And I tell you, that was such a joyous moment. And I was so excited. I thought, oh my gosh, I have jumped over that precipice, and finally my brain is like accepting it, and so it was a super beautiful moment. So again, take that leap when you are presented with it. And if it's the right thing to do, take it, have the courage to do it. Have the grit, because sometimes, again, your brain is going to fight against you, and it's going to come up with opportunities to not progress. And you're going to think things through and go, why am I doing this? This is so crazy. Like, this doesn't make any sense. That's where the grit comes in. Like, you've got to have the tenacity and the perseverance to follow through with what you want to do, and rely on your tribe for support, and talk to people, as I said, so that as you are taking that leap, you've got people who have your back. So cognitive dissonance it's something that really confused me when I started my own journey. I was like, well, I didn't understand that there could be opposing thought patterns that are fighting it out in your brain. But the more that I've gotten into my own journey and my own way of processing things, it's been an amazing tool. Yeah, as I've recognized it, I've been able to see that, okay, I can use this as I recognize what's going on, I know what's happening. I can use it as a basically a springboard to taking that leap and to fully adopting the things that are going to benefit me. And it's a very, very beautiful, albeit sometimes scary, process to go through. So I encourage you to really evaluate what are the things in your brain that are causing you some tension. And, you know, as you do that and you really think about, why it's causing you tension and who you want to be, what you actually want to do, then you are going to find some direction in that. So I hope you found some value in this. Please, if you would give me a review, I would really love to know what you think about what I'm producing and putting out there into the world. And if there's something that I can do better, I would love to know that. Of course, I love the 5-star reviews, but I want you to be honest and I want to have the true feedback, because if I don't have true feedback, then I can't be better. So I really, really value that. Thank you so much for being here today. You guys are wonderful. And remember that your purpose is in your story. Take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step